entrepreneur needs to always be aware that the investor does not think the same way as the entrepreneur. Many of them have a job, so they can only work on this new idea at night and on weekends. It's a difficult time in their lives. There is a way that you can be a real star.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today it is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce you all to this very particular session where we are going to know more about how to fail during your first meeting with investors. My name is Harsh Pandey and I'm going to moderate this session for all of you wherein I'm going to introduce you all about session and perhaps the person who is going to interact and address all of us. First of all, I request you all to kindly acknowledge and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest. And he's very dynamic, very interesting, and very renowned personality, none other than Mr. Zev Siegl, who is here with us. I would like to request all the persons, those who are watching the session on YouTube, to kindly upload in the comment section and welcome the presence of our guest. Our guest, Mr. Zev Siegl, is a founder of 5 small businesses, including Starbucks Coffee Company. Yes, Starbucks as a startup. Today, Mr. Zev Siegl is passionate about enabling leaders of new ventures to make good decisions. As a mentor, he meets online with leaders of new ventures, including startups in Europe, the Americas, and the Southeast Asia. As a counselor to MBA candidates, he regularly had sessions with individual students at 2 graduate school of business. As a global partner, he speaks frequently to audience of entrepreneurs and executives. And I believe his profile has so many things, so many glories, which I won't be able to explain in next few minutes. But I'm pretty sure in this conversation, we are going to learn a lot from him. So first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Harsh Pandey. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much.
I should say before we begin that I have, over the past 10 years, worked personally with hundreds of small business first-time entrepreneurs. So my ability to have this conversation is not just based on my own experience. It's really based on all of these people to whom I've given my time.
Indeed, sir, it's our pleasure too. So moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen, is how to fail during your first meeting with investors. Investors play a vital role in the success and growth of a company. Investors can provide valuable contacts, useful advice, and a motivation for you to work hard at growing your business. In addition to providing the funding, sir, my question to you is, how can entrepreneurs fail during their first meeting with investors?
Well, like so many other things in life, it's easy to fail when you're talking to investors for the first time. It's a moment that's can make an entrepreneur very nervous. And it also is a time when many people make huge mistakes. So I'd like to suggest that we imagine a situation. The entrepreneur is about to begin or is in a teleconference with an investor. It's easy to imagine. That's how people talk to investors these days, is through teleconferences. And you think you're ready, and you know for a fact that this is a real investor, that he's invested in some other company. So we can set that question aside. Sometimes people who appear to be investors actually don't really want to invest. But let's assume that this person, you've checked him out and he wants to invest. And you've worked really hard to get this meeting. These meetings with investors are very difficult. You have to find them, and sometimes you have to find somebody who knows the investor who will introduce you. It takes a lot of time and effort. But the moment comes, there he is on the screen in front of you. When I say he, it might be a woman also, but I'll use the pronoun for men. So it would be very easy for the entrepreneur to focus everything on the investor. The investor is the most important. But actually, it would be very helpful if before this teleconference takes place, if the entrepreneur would focus on themselves, not on the investor, not on the opportunity, but to make sure that they're ready to do this. So in theory, the investor is hoping that the entrepreneur will do something during the presentation that will allow the investor to say, oh, thank you, I'm going to think about it, I'll get back to you later, I'm not sure about this, and other things that actually mean no. So the investor is hoping, believe me, is hoping that the entrepreneur will not be as good as he had hoped, and so that the investor can just keep his money in the bank where it's nice and safe and not take a chance. So how can you fail in talking to these people? What can you do to not have a successful outcome? Well, let's talk about Zooming first. Well, Zooming is a challenge, or any other teleconference system. It's a big challenge. You sacrifice all of the personal stuff, the shaking hands, the sitting down together, maybe having a cup of coffee together. All that's gone. So just suddenly there you are on Zoom. And the key issue, some of the key issues are, what are you wearing? What's behind you in the image? It's very important what's on the screen. And another very important thing about Zooming is, have you rehearsed? Did you ask a friend to make believe they were the investor you're going to be talking to tomorrow, and you give them the presentation? Because if you do that, if you actually do a real rehearsal, you might find some things that you're not very happy about. And it would be better to find them when you're talking to your friend who's making believe he's an investor than when you're talking to a real investor. So the Zooming thing is also an issue. And then there's your slide deck. So PowerPoint slide decks are commonly used now by entrepreneurs all over the world to present not only to investors, but to other people. And it's a question of what the style of the slide deck is. My advice to entrepreneurs is to have 2 or 3 different slide decks. The first one is what we might call a teaser. It's to try and interest the person. And you might send that slide deck to the investor before the conference. It's full of beautiful pictures. Maybe it has a voiceover of you talking about the industry, but it's no details. Then there's the slide deck that you're going to use during the presentation. It's pretty boring for the investor who's listening to you if you are saying out loud what's on the slide decks. So the things that are on the slide deck, the words that are in the slide deck in particular, you don't want to repeat them because the person that you're talking to can read them. And while we're talking about words in a slide deck for a Zoom presentation, there can't be too many words. You're not writing a book. This is as few words as possible, images, charts, graphs, that kind of thing. So that's about the slide deck style. Then we come to the most important thing, the thing that causes more entrepreneurs to fail with investors than you can imagine. And that is the financial forecast. So you've done an estimate of how your company is going to perform, what the sales are going to be, what your costs are going to be, what the profit's going to be, et cetera. And you've done a separate sheet that shows the things that you have to purchase before you can begin business. Time from a lawyer and an accountant, software, maybe another computer, all these things that you have to buy. That's separate. And then the financial forecast is the operating document. Well, this is a place that investors like to focus on. They like to look at your financial forecast. And you know why they like to look at it? They like to look at it because they want to find a mistake. Sometimes a mathematics mistake. I was in a presentation as an observer where there were 15 angel investors listening to 5 different entrepreneurs. And with each entrepreneur, there was a question and answer period. The second entrepreneur who presented, somebody in the audience, one of the angel investors said, "Can we go back to the slide of your financial forecast?" And he said, "I want you to look at line 17. I think that's a mistake. I think there's an addition mistake in that." Can you believe that? I mean, that is what really happens. So of course that investor is not going to invest because you made a mistake in your forecast. Another thing about forecasting that really is a problem is you have to make sure that it's realistic. Yeah, you might think you're going to have 100% of the market and that you don't have any competitors, but I don't think the investor is going to agree with you. Nobody gets 100% of a market. So the financial forecast needs to be realistic. There are lots of people who can help you with that. There are people, the staff of accelerators. There's online help. There are experts in every city in the world. It's a very good idea to get outside help with the financial forecast. Fourth reason why people sometimes fail in front of investors. They'll be going along and they'll say, "This is a breakthrough product that we're bringing to market. And nobody really competes with us directly." Well, when you say that to an investor, the investor sits back in their chair and gets very curious about how it is that you alone in the world don't have any competition. And that's an issue. I instead suggest to everyone that I work with that they acknowledge their competition and they embrace them and talk about them briefly, very briefly, and state what they do have. Usually the situation is that your competitors overlap with you a little bit, but not completely. And it's a good idea when you're talking to potential investors to acknowledge the competition. They like that. It shows them that you're really thinking about how you're going to succeed. You're aware of your competition. Yeah, you've got a plan for dealing with them, for doing better than they do. Investors are surprisingly interested in your team. They really care about you and the people that are in the company with you, maybe 2 friends of yours who you've gone into business with. And then they also care about who's giving you advice. And if you have an advisory board, a group of people that you meet with who coach you and offer suggestions, they want to know about them. And if you have outside people like a lawyer, an accountant, or somebody who retired from the same industry that you're trying to get into, you want to know about them too. And frankly, it's a really good idea to tell them about all these people that you're in touch with about your idea. Well, why is that such a great idea? Because it shows the investor that you're not an egomaniac, that you are actually willing to listen to people who have good ideas. Now, you just listen to them. You don't have to do what they say. It's your company. But investors really like to know about that team. Now, for instance, I'm a co-founder of Starbucks Coffee. This was a long time ago. The reason Starbucks succeeded in its first decade, when it was just in Seattle, Washington, was one of the primary reasons was that there were 3 founders. I'm only one of them. And we each had something that we were really good at, and that really helped the company. And when we needed to talk to investors, which was in our second year, they appreciated that there were these 3 guys, they had lots of talent because there were 3 of them. The 6th important thing is market research. Of course, you do market research. All entrepreneurs do market research. But it's the way they interpret it that's so interesting. I've already mentioned that entrepreneurs have a way of overestimating the percentage of the entire market that they're going to get. I had a woman that I'm working with who's developing a software platform for a particular industry in India. And this was last week, and she told me she was expected to, after the 3rd year, to have 50% of the market for this kind of special software. I really challenged her on that as an advisor. I said, gee, you've got 5 known competitors. You're probably going to have 2 more that you don't know about yet that will just appear. And you think you're going to have half the market and the other 7 are going to have the other half. I said, that's very optimistic. And I said, better you should hear that from me than from an investor who says, no way. Another aspect of market research that's very interesting is I think a lot of entrepreneurs overestimate the amount of sales they're going to make to each customer. They'll say, well, this is a business-to-business sale. Each customer we're going to estimate is going to spend $700 US a month with us. Well, maybe not. So that's a number that the amount of business that you're going to do with each customer, that has to be very well researched. And then finally, this is especially true of business to consumer platforms, places you go to find things, for example. That is that you project the number of customers that you're going to add each month. But sometimes first-time entrepreneurs forget to project the number of customers they're going to lose each month. And so that's an automatic thing to ask if you're an investor. The investor says, well, I see you've projected that you're going to add 797 customers every month. That's great. And how many of those are you going to lose? And if you don't have the right answer to that question, you're in trouble. You are going to lose some customers. There's another name for that whole subject. It's called customer retention. How do you keep them? And then finally, what is the deal, the opportunity exactly that you're offering to the investor? So they're going to let's come up with a fantasy example. You are offering the opportunity for this investor to invest $100,000 US, and for that they are going to get 9% of the shares of your company, and that there will be some other offerings later to other investors. Well, that's nice, $100,000, they get 9% of the company. So the investor is going to look at that, and they're probably going to say, well, that doesn't sound right, but we can go on and keep talking because I'm interested in what you're doing. That's a signal that there's going to be a tough negotiation. in many parts of the world, including India and in Asia, the negotiation with the investor is very difficult. Once they've agreed to invest, adjusting the dollars that they are going to invest to the percentage that they're going to get, that's very difficult. And I have a suggestion to people, which is, I think that entrepreneurs should compute the return on investment that this investor will get if they invest $100,000 today and the company is sold 4 years from today. If they own 9% of the company, what will they get back? And if it's a lot of money, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details right now, but if it's much more than they invested, maybe they'll be interested. And that's the beginning of a real negotiation. And I want to warn your listeners, Harsh, that that negotiation of how much of the company the investor gets for the amount of dollars is not over. It's not done until the investor transfers the money to your bank account. Until that money is transferred, investors will try all sorts of ways to get more of your company for their money. And it can be really disturbing or challenging for entrepreneurs because, of course, by the time the investor transfers the money, the entrepreneur will probably have spent it already. I mean, they're anticipating this money. The investor said the money was coming, so they start spending it before they have it. And then the investor says, oh, by the way, I think you should give me some extra shares because I'm a nice guy. And this can happen. So these are 7 different ways that entrepreneurs can have a horrible time in their first meeting with an investor.
Indeed, sir, you have given a very detailed overview, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, they are surely going to find this insightful. Sir, an investor is investing in the product, a market, and a plan, but also in you as an individual. Regardless of how good your idea is, any investors will need to be confident in your ability to see it through and build it into a successful and profitable business as an entrepreneur. Sir, my next question to you is, how can an entrepreneur enable investors to feel confident about their abilities?
Well, specifically about the entrepreneur's ability, I think that the best way to do that is to surround yourself with good people so that the investor isn't looking at just you, but is also looking at your team. There's a saying that it's okay to have a weakness, something that you're not very good at, say bookkeeping and accounting. That's okay. You don't have to be an expert bookkeeper or accountant as an entrepreneur, but you have to have one nearby that you can call on. And then you tell the investor, oh, I recognize that I'm a great salesman and I have a great idea and I'm a good manager of people, but when it comes to the financial part of the company, that's why we have this other person on board who can handle those responsibilities. An investor was happy. That's okay with an investor. I see some people making a mistake in trying to impress the potential investor. They will overstate their own capabilities. You don't have to do that. You just have to have other people that make up for your weaknesses.
Indeed, sir. So you have given again a very insightful answer. Sir, my next question to you is, the pitch is used as a tool to get the outcome you are looking for from potential investors. What do investors want in the pitch?
Well, investors are primarily concerned with what's the idea, how do you make money, who are the people? Those are the 3 things that they focus on first. Then after that, then they focus on other things. So what's the idea? The idea is usually stated in terms of a need in the world, or a need for a certain group of people. So you say, there's a need. here's how we're going to meet that need. Okay, that's the idea. And then the team, well, we've already talked about the team. Who are the people? These are the ways that investors focus. That's what they're interested in. How are you going, and also how are you going to make money? Which that's the third thing, which is answered by your financial forecast.
Indeed, sir. Sir, my next question to you is what we have generally seen is investors and entrepreneurs sometimes appear to be from different planets. How can an entrepreneur get in sync with the way investors think?
The investors are from the planet Venus, and entrepreneurs are from the planet Mars, and they don't speak the same language. It's really true. It's absolutely true. And it makes life difficult for entrepreneurs. I would say that talking to some investors about this problem is a very good idea. But in general, the entrepreneur wants to have some involvement with a fresh young company that might make a lot of money, but they don't want to lose their investment. Okay, that's the investor's mentality. Yeah, I might be interested in this, seems like a nice guy, but I sure don't want to lose my money that I invest. Okay, then on the entrepreneur side, the entrepreneur's all excited about their product, this new software platform, or a way of making tractors, farm tractors use less fuel, or whatever it is. And that's all they want to talk about is their fabulous product. Well, the investor isn't there. The investor places less importance on that. Yes, they're interested in it. Yes, they agree there's an opportunity there, but they don't want to lose their money. So the entrepreneur needs to constantly be aware that the investor is looking for a way to not invest because they don't want to lose their money, and to make them comfortable. There is a need. We've tailored this whole organization to meet that need. We can make money doing it. We have a great team. Those kinds of things. That's the issue. So the entrepreneur needs to always be aware that the investor does not think the same way as the entrepreneur.
Indeed, sir. Again, it was a quite insightful answer from your side, and I think the viewers who are watching this session, they are surely going to find this very interesting. Not only I think, but I do strongly believe this. Sir, my next question to you is actually I have got this question from one of my viewers, and he asked me to include this question for sure. What are the reasons most startups fail to raise funds?
Oh, I think that the reason that most startups fail at the point of talking to investors, is that what you're asking? Is that correct? Is lack of preparation. They assume, they're busy. The entrepreneurs are always busy. They always don't have enough people around them, and many of them have a job, so they can only work on this new idea at night and on weekends. It's a difficult time in their lives. So they hear about a friend of a friend of a friend who has invested in some small company and is very interested in the industry that the entrepreneur is involved in. And so a meeting is set up, and the entrepreneur doesn't stop to think, oh my gosh, this meeting is really important, so I better get ready for it. As a matter of fact, maybe I could postpone it a few days so I can be more ready. No, they don't do that. They just rush into the meeting. And that's a mistake, because those meetings are really few and difficult to get. So you have to do it right. So I would say lack of preparation.
Indeed, sir. Entrepreneurship is important as it has ability to improve standards of living and create wealth, not only for the entrepreneurs but also for related businesses. Entrepreneurs also help drive change with innovation, where new and improved product enable new markets to be developed. Sir, my next question to you is: how do you see the future of entrepreneurship?
Well, your question is leading me toward the concept of social entrepreneurship, um, which has to do with the environmental social impact of your new idea. This is something that investors are interested in. It's usually a second tier concern. Once they understand your business and your team and how you make money, then they want to know that you aren't ruining the environment and maybe you're doing something good for people. So what do you do if it's a software platform for farmers? You know, how are you going to improve the world by helping helping farmers do a better job of bookkeeping? Well, there are a couple ways. One is you could study, maybe this actually will improve farming practices. But another way to do it is if there's no direct connection between your company and doing good for the environment, perhaps you could do one of two things. You could donate your software to some people who can't afford it and make a big deal about making a donation, helping people who don't have money to compete with people who do have money. Everybody loves that. Another way to do the social enterprise is to donate some of your profits. Now, this means that you don't donate until there are profits, because that's too hard. But you were going to donate a part of your profits to certain organizations, and you're going to put on your website pictures of the people who are receiving this donation. And it might be unrelated. It might be donating in the coffee industry, for example. There are a number of coffee companies around the world who donate money to local schools for the children of people who work on coffee estates. These are generally poor people who pick coffee cherries, which are later made into coffee beans. And that's a great thing to do. And they always put it on their website and talk about it publicly. We are doing social good. Now, they aren't doing social good by their existence of buying coffee from these estates, but they are doing social good by helping the children of the people who work on the estate. So those are ways that, just a small number of examples of how people can do social good through their business. Investors are interested in that, especially younger investors. In North America, if you're talking to a 35-year-old software millionaire who's interested in investing in your company, that person for sure at that age bracket is going to be very interested in the social good that you're doing.
Indeed, sir. I think it's a kind of privilege today. We got to hear all those things from you. And I can say, sir, there's a lot more to learn from you. But today, I don't want to take you much time. So moving to my last question of this session, sir, what will be one piece of advice from your side to all the young entrepreneurs?
There is a way that you can be a real star as an entrepreneur. This is my advice. And that way to become a star is to understand the financial aspects of business. And there's a way you can do that. It is not enough to be a charming person that people love or attracted to. It's not enough to be an expert in your field. You have to understand in a general way how money flows through businesses. And there are courses online. There are, of course, courses in person at every college and university in the world about this subject. Accelerators have teachers who do this. And then there are in many countries, there are government programs which make available low-cost classes for people who want to learn about the money aspect of business. This is something that could be very important to your life, not just in business. Let's imagine that you volunteer time to your religious organization or to a community club. Well, if you're sitting there at a meeting with the people at that community organization and you happen to understand about how money flows through an organization and how generally how bookkeeping is done, everybody's going to love you. They're going to be very interested in you. And the same is true for your company. If you are so lucky as to get your company started, your ability to have an intelligent conversation with your chief financial officer is going to help the company, and you're going to feel good about it. It's a wonderful feeling. I mean, for instance, when the three co-founders of Starbucks started their company, only one of us understood the financial aspect, and it wasn't me. It was one of my partners. Today, I completely understand how money flows through a company and making deals with investors in new ventures and that kind of stuff. I get it. And people who talk to me understand that I get it right away because I ask the right questions. So to your listeners, I would say, and viewers, I would say, wow, what would happen if you could ask the right questions? What would happen if when an investor asks you a financial question, you answer perfectly? In US English, we say you nail it. You hit the nail with the hammer, and you realize that the investor understands that you understand financial stuff, because you can see it in his eyes. He's going, yeah. He's nodding his head, and this is a great moment. It takes a little time to come to understand these things and to be able, for instance, to create a financial forecast. But once you get that, that is the key to a successful approach to business.
Indeed, sir. Again, it was really a very wonderful advice from your side. And I think the viewers who are watching this session, they are surely going to find us insightful. And sir, I must say the kind of energy you brought into the session was very inspiring for me as well. And trust me, sir, this is one of the most inspiring conversations I have ever had on personal level. Thank you so much, sir, for joining and giving your important time. It was a very
You're welcome, Harsh. I really appreciate the time that you put in preparing for this conversation. It really helps your listeners, and it helps me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside, I'm alone.